Good day, everyone. I'm Minister Artezuela from PCB 22402P. I'm going to report the Section 2 obligation with the period from Article 1193 to Article 1198. So let's go to the discussion. Article 1193 Obligations for whose fulfillment a day certain has been fixed shall be demandable only when that day comes. Obligations with a resolutory period take effect at once but terminate upon arrival of the day certain. A day certain is understood to be that which must necessarily come, although it may not be known when. If the uncertainty consists in whether the day will come or not, the obligation is conditional, and it shall be regulated by the rules of the preceding section. Obviously, the Article 1193 is an obligation with a period. So, what is a period? Period is a future uncertain event upon the arrival of which the obligation or right subject to it either arises or it is terminated. In an obligation, it dictates when it will begin and when it will be true. An obligation with a period is one whose effects or consequences are subjected in one way or another to the expiration or arrival of said period or term. An obligation with a period is a kind of obligation wherein its performance is subject to a term or period, and can only be demandable when the period is expired. Such period is a day certain which must necessarily come, although it may not be known when. There are distinctions of period. The first one is as to fulfillment. A period is a certain event which must happen sooner or later at a date known beforehand or at a time which cannot be determined, while a condition is an uncertain event. For example, death of a person. He will die, but the date of his death is not yet determined, but his death will surely come. The second one is as to time. A period refers only to the future, while a condition may also refer to a past event unknown to the parties. So, how will a past event be unknown to the parties? For example, Santi promised to give his horse named Napoleon to Kara if Kara got an 85% score or above on math exam. The result has come out already on the website of Kara's school. They both did not know that the result came already and Kara got 90%. The event had happened, but the parties weren't aware due to no idea that the result has already come out. But it doesn't mean that the obligation is void. So in this case, Santi is bound to give his source to Kara upon seeing the result. Third one is as to influence on the obligation. A period merely fixes the time for the efficaciousness of the obligation. If suspensive, it cannot prevent the breadth of the obligation in due time. If resolutory, it does not annul even in fiction the fact of its existence. On the other hand, a condition causes an obligation to arise or to cease. Because of this difference, a period does not carry with it, except when there is a stipulation expressly made by the parties, the same retroactive consequences that follow a condition. It means period dictates when the obligation will begin and will terminate. The fourth one is as to effect when left to debtor's will. A period which depends upon the will of the debtor empowers the court to fix the duration thereof, while a condition which depends upon the sole will of the debtor invalidates the obligation. It depends on the debtor's will. It means there is no burden on the debtor and no juridical tie is created. For example, I am the debtor. I will pay the exact amount of my debt on last Sunday of November. The fifth one, as to retroactivity of effects, unless there is an agreement to the contrary, the arrival of a period does not have any retroactive effect, while the happening of a condition has retroactive effect. A period must be passable. If the period is impassable, for example, February 30, the obligation is void. There are three kinds of period. The first one is according to effect. Under of it is ex die or suspensive period. The obligation begins only from a day certain upon the arrival of the period. The obligation is not suspended but only the demandability of the obligation. For example, Choi Ji-tae promised that he will take care of Naul once Jun-young dies. The demandability of the obligation of Choi Ji-tae will be suspended, yet the obligation will begin to arise once Jun-young dies. Indiem or resolutory period is also under the kind of period according to effect. The obligation is valid up to a day certain and terminates upon the arrival of the period, so the obligation is demandable at once and the arrival of the period will extinguish or terminate the obligation. For example, Shin Jun-young will support Noul until his death. The obligation of Jun-young to Noul is only demandable at once. The first kind of period according to source is legal period. It is when it's provided by law. Payment of income tax is one of the example that is set every April 15 of the year. The second one is conventional period or voluntarily period. It is mentioned in the contract. It is agreed by both parties. The third one is judicial period, when the period depends upon the sole will of the debtor. For example, there is intention of fulfilling of obligation between parties but the period is not fixed. This is the time when the period will be fixed by the court. The kind of period according to definiteness is definite period. It is when it is fixed or it is known when it will come. For example, December 10, 2021, the date is specific. The second one according to definiteness is indefinite period. For example, death or delivery of a baby by a pregnant mother. The period is not specific but it will happen surely on a day